The entertainment world has always been full of mystery, and with that comes ambiguity. A type of ambiguity that poses the possibility of malicious entities and events taking place behind the curtain that the audience can't see. Music artists have had miraculous rises of fame just for their record to be destroyed by sex crimes. Massive creators getting a surge of popularity just to be caught by the internet indulging in vile things. It never comes to an end. The shocking reveals we hear about celebrities that bring about the termination of their career or an audience of empathizers if the horrible abuse happened towards them. There's been too many cases of this, and anime does not shy away from depicting this sort of trauma in their own series. Oshinoko is a show that does this perspective so much justice. From mental illness to dynamics between actors, the tensions between every thought pondered, action taken, and words spoken sticks throughout the whole show. Something you think that has been resolved in the first season rears its head again in the second season that leads to a striking revelation. In this video, we'll explore how Oshinoko's storytelling presents the facets of the entertainment industry in a way that, rather than making you disgusted or appalled, brings you around to an empathy-filled viewpoint that makes you resonate with the characters and their stories. Without further stalling, let's get into how Oshinoko exposes the entertainment industry. Before starting, we have to understand the intent of Oshinoko. What is it trying to do as a story that either aligns with the main plot or is a result of the conflict at hand? Aka Akasaka, the author of Oshinoko, did intentionally mean to write a story about the entertainment industry of both its benefits and faults. With events in real life that sparked this idea, like live actions of shows and darker events, Akasaka had a lot in mind when he wrote this manga. He took many of the interviews he had with people all over the industry and considered them when writing different acts of the story, such as the television drama arc and the new 2.5D stage play arc. Everywhere from scriptwriters to producers and top talent actors, Akasaka had his hand in every pot. You could say he was a glutton if this were a family gathering of some sorts. From gripes and struggles to well-deserved achievements, he wanted to hear every part of their experience. There's insights to be learned in both facets because Oshinoko is a story of ups and downs. While there are moments where characters are at their lowest and traumas from their past crawl back into the present, the plot loops back around to the healing of these memories and triumph over these difficulties. It's a well-balanced story, and you can't really know the intricacies of how different industry professionals might have felt unless you have first-hand interviews with such people. When thinking about what demographic he wanted to make his characters, he believed he could get the most impact with crafting younger teenage people. This is because the events that occur within the Japanese entertainment industry would have a greater effect on adolescent people, and with this, much more of the audience would be able to sympathize and understand the degree of intensity of these demented incidents. It isn't a surprise to anyone that the majority of anime fans fall under the young adult demographic to adolescent viewers. The most popular anime genre, shonen, is built to specifically appeal to young males. Of course, this doesn't limit it to only men and boys, but they are definitely the most vocal about it. Even for the part of the audience who falls under the adult demographic, it is said that young adult fiction appeals mostly to adults who have already gone through or experienced something adjacent to the plot of the story they're watching. Whether it's reliving it through the main character's first experience or simply relating to it having been in their position before, young adult fiction majorly appeals to adults rather than just its targeted audience. From these points made and how he explains his storytelling decisions, we can derive that the whole point of the story was to reach the audience's heart. With the tragedy and the miracles, through the dynamics between characters and their own internal struggle, Oshinoko was trying to reach through the screen to the viewers and get them to understand what it is like in the Japanese entertainment industry. Going into the first episode, so much happens in so little time, but the pacing gives us enough time to internalize our feelings about the characters presented and their situations. From Aqua in his past life into his current life, and Ai getting to take care of the family she's wanted for a very long time, we can appreciate the sentiments they hold towards each other. They consist of cherishing each other's time and love for one another. Even if you understand Aqua and Ruby's love as being parasocial at first, they are no longer that after a while of their new lives. They know about the inner workings of Ai's life and all the effort she has been putting towards furthering her career. They know about the time she sets aside to spend time with her children, and they get to appreciate all of that as her new family. Given enough time, feelings develop and evolve to fit the new experiences each party is undergoing. I may be oblivious to the fact that her children are not entirely who she thinks they are, but feelings don't remain the same forever. What can be first recognized as appreciation for a person and what they provide can change into the emotion of love for who they truly are and the value their existence provides to them alone. In all honesty, I had my reservations about how I would have felt if she had known Aqua and Ruby were reincarnated as her children from past lives, but from how I understand it now, it doesn't matter. They each fulfilled their roles until the very end. To the last moments of Ai's life, to her very last breaths, she continued to love them, and Aqua and Ruby reciprocate these emotions. Oshinoko takes her reincarnation story and does the most with it. We would closely associate this with isekai, but Oshinoko only takes that reincarnation aspect and disregards all other facets of the genre that makes it tropey. Rather than displacing the characters into an entirely different world, they are put into a different part of the same world that is similar enough. Instead of being put on a pedestal or having some sort of advantage against others, Aqua and Ruby still need to put in the efforts in gaining rank in this new lifestyle. The entertainment industry is a different part of life that not everyone is meant for. If you're thrown into it, however, or become closely associated with someone who is involved, then you learn how to overcome these barriers and learn to live with these new adjustments being made to your lifestyle. We are made to prevail over these certain things should the circumstances call for it. Aqua and Ruby prove that they can do this and continue to do it throughout the series. It is through these differences and in the time spent developing the characters that the first episode was such a hit and shot the series to the moon when the premiere ended. It gave you a resolution that made you care about the revenge story of Aqua. You want Ruby to succeed in becoming an idol, as well as when you're getting deeper into the first season. Unlike their absent father who is not present, you are here to experience their lives alongside them and support them in their endeavors, even if Aqua is becoming the next serial killer showcased on Criminal Files. Through season 1, we are able to see all the different parts of the entertainment industry. In television dramas to reality TV and idol culture, we experience so many different parts of the Japanese sphere that you would think we don't get to feel out all their different parts, but Oshinoko focuses on one conflict the characters are facing and dives deep into it. You would think Akasaka is Mr. Worldwide the way he talks about these issues that seem specific and exaggerated, but have probably occurred some way or another. To start off with, the television drama with Kana is the first time we get to see Aqua act since he was a child. It's an important moment and a big break for Aqua's path towards becoming involved with the whole industry. He has to show up here, otherwise it would be quite the lengthy process to get into the high tier projects in order to enact his revenge. For the plot as a whole, it is the first stepping stone towards the big picture resolution. In our analysis, however, we'll look at Melt and why he was considered for the show as opposed to people like Kana and Aqua. Kana is an amazing actor. To the beginnings of the first season to the present episode, Kana has demonstrated why she is an A-list actor. Ever since she was a child, she performed up to a bar that the industry saw as acceptable. She has gained some renown, despite her reputation having gone down, becoming more so a ghost in the mainstream scene. She is still able to land jobs like this one though because of her past performances, especially compared to some of the other actors in the show. Melt is a character who we get introduced to during this arc. He is an ikemen, and for those of you who don't know what that means, kindly, it is a stud, rudely, it is a fuckboy. Label him as you want, but he landed this job because of his appearance and popularity with the demographic of the source material. Given that it's a shoujo manga based show, Melty garners the type of fans who would love to see someone of his extravagance in the shoes of the main love interest. They'd enjoy the show and even more because of the genre. This only covers a particular group of people though. The manga branches out far from the groupies of Melt as a mainstream shoujo manga that has had a dedicated fan base for a very long time. If you followed any shonen manga in recent years, you'd know the type of response the readers would have with a bad adaptation. That is the situation we have in Oshinoko, a show that has been brought down by the actors in it. Kana is a star among this group, but characters like Melt don't take the project seriously and tarnish any scene they are in. Kana needs to find a solution, and that lies in Aqua. In the final episode, there's a scene where the antagonist reveals himself, and Aqua is going to play that role. With a bit of studying, he understands his role within the show. Despite what he says, Aqua has enough know-how to be considered a genius. When it's time to put on the performance, he does it in one take. He poses as a disgusting and guttural being who is a lunatic. He expresses these emotions clearly through his few actions. Through some tricks and the extent to which he knows about Melt's and Kana's capabilities, the episode turns out to be the highest rated episode of the season. We've laid it all out, so let's look at the imbalance presented by the story. Aqua and Kana are two actors who are prodigies at what they do. They resonate well with one another and perform excellently when paired up. Melt is the odd one out in the equation. He shouldn't be there if we're crafting a show with good actors who can give above par performances. In the acting world though, given that someone has enough renown, they can be forced on set into a role that they might not deserve. It happens all the time in real life, both in Japan and in Hollywood. Adam Sandler makes outdated comedy movies, and nobody except nostalgia-ridden adults that were raised on the movie Grown Ups like to watch his movies in theaters anymore. Chris Pratt is someone who is known for his role within the Marvel movies, but there should have been no reason he was selected for the role of Mario in the Mario movie. These people with renown are able to land jobs because they have some sort of advantage, whether it be connections or their legacy. For Melt, his legacy is being a pop figure in teen culture, so it would be easy enough to throw him into a romance drama and call it a day. When you compare him to the two performers alongside him, there's an unfairness in the dynamic at how Melt landed the job versus how Kana and Aqua landed it. Aqua had to perform well in his past in order to gain the recognition of Kana. She was the one who suggested him for that role, and it was through his past deeds that he was brought up at all. It isn't unrelated to the craft at hand. It makes sense to put him up for this part, given his known roles for acting off-putting and altogether strange individuals. Kana had to build up her career from early childhood in order to gain a reputation she does have. She performed in music shows, commercials, television dramas, and anything else she could get a role in. She performed excellently in all of them, and while the producers who put her in these roles don't acknowledge the star presence that she has, Kana is still able to bring out the emotional acting that she is well known for when she is matched by other actors in terms of prowess. Melt has no experience in this field, but he was placed in the role almost immediately. It is an accomplishment he gains based on his privilege, and even after the fact, it isn't a role of his that he would brag about after realizing that he brought down the overall quality of the series drastically. This is something that can't have a do-over. A production like this will be up on air forever and stored away in the catacombs of the internet. It is in its dark past now, and we can clearly see the imbalance that arises from unfair advantages in the entertainment world. There isn't much to be understood here because it is crystal clear. The next events in the anime, though, take a darker turn, and it isn't something to be taken lightly. In the reality show arc, Aqua participates as a background character among other high schoolers on a set where they chat and hang out as if they were close friends. While they do grow chummy with each other, there are insidious setups happening behind the scenes. Akane is one of the girls from the show, and while she is a professional when it comes to stage plays, a television formatted project that mixes the genuine part of their personalities with a bit of flair from their acting, Akane does not have a script to play off of. She needs to make up her own character in order to boost the popularity of the show and her own reputation as well. She seeks to help with the producers and writers in the show. She studies and tries to learn what the audience wants from her. It is from this stress and pressure that through a rush of anxiety and indecisiveness that she accidentally hurts another one of the girls in the show. While they made up immediately and no bad feelings were harbored, the cameras were rolling and the producers will use any footage they can to spin some sort of intriguing narrative. The next episode of the series gets uploaded. There's backlash towards Akane from the accident, and she does not receive it all too well. She tries her best to keep pushing forward, but through media coverage and internet discourse, the negativity seeps through the cracks of her heart, and it affects her to a point where she believes herself to have dug a hole she can't crawl out of. When people put themselves on the level of a celebrity or an influencer, they represent their own being and self as a human brand. The actions and words they take and speak change how the general public looks at them. Whether or not the audience is parasocial or separated from the creative doesn't matter. It'll stir something in them as long as they have any ounce of care in their body for the stars in the show. Whether it's just complaining or some sort of seeking justice or revenge tactic in a minuscule way, commenters will post anything to get their opinion out there and hurt a creative if they believe they did something not morally upstanding. When Akane puts herself out of her comfort zone and presents her real self in this show, she's demonstrating a certain degree of emotional labor, where she's trying to please the audience, and with how neurodivergent she tends to be, she really wants the affirmation of the viewers at this point. Combine the sentiment of being a fish out of water with the fact that fans want to leave her out to dry, and you have a recipe for emotional disaster. Falling into a deep depression, she attempts to take her own life, but is miraculously saved by the friends who care very much about her. When coming back to the show, it appears that her friends are happy to have her back, but the producers couldn't feel any more indifferent. When probed by Aqua, one of the producers on set talked about how Akane wanted to learn more about what it means to be on reality television. With a bit of a nudge in the right direction, they created the correct conditions for the scenario that took place. From now on, they had a take they could spin anyway. They were getting clicks, and that's all that mattered to them, completely disregarding the well-being of these children. It's alarming when you think about how these actors were put through this, but as always, a representation in fiction tends to have an adjacent example in real life. I don't know who else watching is a zoomer like me, but if you watch shows like iCarly, a comedy where the main cast majorly consists of children actors, then you understand a thing or two about how little these producers and directors sometimes care about the people they are supposed to be taking care of. Dan Schneider used to be one of Nickelodeon's most successful directors because of his success with children's shows such as Drake and Josh, iCarly, Zoe 101, and more. He was a big hit because of these shows and was renowned among the industry. It came out later though that he engaged in several forms of misconduct with the crew of these shows, which includes gender discrimination, racism, inappropriate behavior that borders on sexual sexual crimes, and too much to mention here. Most of us know about the story and how horrifying it is. It has affected many of the child actors who were on these shows, and while some of them have made recoveries, others never came back to the industry. In Oshinoko, Akane doesn't lose her passion for performing, but it could have very easily turned out in a more depressing and tragic way. This was too close of a call for the series, and it was a reality check for the viewers to recognize that much of this does happen in real life. It was theorized that Akane's incident was based on a real-life event in Japan, where the actress did end up successfully committing suicide, and while Akasaka did receive scrutiny over this, even saying in interviews later that events in the show were inspired by real events, it doesn't take away from the impact that this single arc had on a lot of the viewers, because for me, it completely changed my point of view on the type of atmosphere that Oshinoko was trying to build for itself as a series. It wasn't going to stop there, but for now, we'd be taking on a lighter note in terms of content, but still as exhausting as the last topic. Oshinoko has had an underlying plot line going through the whole of the first season. Most people would think I'd be talking about the revenge plot following Aqua, but in season 1, the story that felt more prevalent was Ruby's coming up towards becoming a full-fledged idol. She convinced her acting mother to start an idol group. Ruby is attending a performing arts school where top-tier teenage actors, idols, and models work whilst engaging with their studies. She had been building up a team of people with whom she could tackle this goal together as an idol group that would bring back the glory that Ai once had all by herself. In this group, she managed to round up 2 other girls, the YouTuber Memcho and the actress Kana. These 3 seem like an unlikely trio, but with Ruby's passion, Memcho's connections, and Kana's talent, these 3 would make for an amazing idol group that would shake the foundation of their first live concert. But what did it take to get to that point? Let's explore that a little bit. Idol culture in many anime tends to have a brighter, shinier atmosphere compared to other anime, much similar to traditional magical girl shows. Think of Idol Master, Love Live, and Zombieland Saga. Sure, one of these examples is a bit out of left field, but these perfectly encapsulate that comedy and demeanor that a typical idol anime would have. Oshinoko also has the comedy attitude for the most part, but it also likes to tackle underlying feelings that don't get talked about usually. Similar to real-life idol group interviews where past idols talk about their work doing time with an agency, Oshinoko covers the burdensome aspects of being an idol. The never-ending practice, the constant need to be on social media, the confidence that you need. For some people, you could frame this issue as practicing what you love, reading positive comments, and building your character. You could just as easily flip the script to read as tiring calisthenics, parasocial behavior bordering on obsession, and self-esteem issues that haunt idols. It's in the undertones of the show, but one in particular, the confidence of an idol, is talked about very thoroughly through the dialogue and imagery. Kana is an actress who was raised up as a genius and later left off as a failure in her adolescence. She says so herself, and later in the series, we hear it from producers that they never really expected much from her. This conclusion may not be necessarily true, but there are enough hints for Kana's mind to pick up on and trick herself into thinking so. When Komachi B, the idol group Ruby formed, are trying to decide the center for their performances, they debate based on passion and talent. Obviously, it's good and all to have the spirit, but talent can't be beat when you're trying to get results. Kana had a history of singing in her childhood, so the other 2 thought she would be right for the job. However, she took the backseat and didn't want the spotlight to be on her. From a scene that was introduced as a joke, where Ruby and Memcho go to karaoke and use the scoring system to decide which out of them could be the center, neither of them do exceptionally well. Off in another room, Kana sits in a booth where she does the same thing. To no one's surprise, she gets a perfect score on the song she sings. She has the excellence, but she can't see it herself. The issue of self-esteem is something that is common in creatives, especially those that need to perform in front of an audience. Musicians often say that the industry has changed since earlier times when their mentors were in the scene. It is no longer how well you can perform, but how marketable you are. Kana experienced the same in her acting career, and in coincidence with this, every other aspect of her creative expression seemed to take the same hit. With this came a dip of self-esteem. Instead of associating her loss in popularity with the carelessness of the industry, Kana connected this drop to her performance itself. A stem of perfectionism began to sprout, and what was known as excellent quality was mediocre to her. When it came time to get up on stage, this affected her aura. Creatives fall into depressions where they can no longer play their instruments or project their voices the way they want to. This spills into dancing and confidence when doing these things. One of the ways that people came back from such conditions was through support from friends and family. One method was through watching their efforts in their own lives. The resilience they showed in their everyday and the dedication they showed to their day jobs or craft inspired these creatives to get back into their own trade. Kana experiences this later in the series in their 2.5D stage play. Another way that friends and family helped the affected was through direct guidance. It doesn't need to be mentorship, but showing that they have their backs or they will be there in their most dire moments. Kana took this one from seeing Aqua out in the audience, supporting her and Komachi B's performance. It brought her back from from having this be a mid-performance to one that exceeded the expectations of all the fans. We just discussed so much about the psychological aspects and the physical and mental cost of being an idol. This isn't the only job in the industry that has creatives doing all this. Modeling doesn't only require confidence during shoots, but in their daily lives. Healthy lifestyles when it comes to dieting, exercises, skin routines, and more to make sure that they are at their 100% for their shoots. Musicians need to produce the beat, the percussions, the strings, the melody, the bridge, the chorus, and everything else their song requires from their genre. They innovate on these and then need to add in the vocals and ad-libs. This is only within the production. Then they need to proceed with marketing and everything that comes with distribution. Concerts require months of rehearsal and memorization to make sure the performance comes out as a bang every time. The changing of venues can mix up certain conditions. All of this can be eased with the help of a label, but that also takes away a cut of their earnings, which is another consideration. There's too much to consider when you're creative in the industry, and I think when you look deeper into Oshinoko and how it presents all this, then connected to things we know about the industry in real life, the series does a lot in showcasing all of this in its true light aside from the main plot. These make up the sidelines of the story, but even so, they have so much depth and add more to the reality of the show as a whole. A quick word from me, this video is sponsored by myself. I want to turn my passion into a living, so if you want to support me while getting exclusive sneak peeks and content, check out my Patreon where I upload live viewing of my scripts, journal entries, thumbnail previews, and honest reviews on media I'm consuming. Thank you so much for enjoying my content, and let's get back into the video. Moving on to season 2, Oshinoko goes from a series that moves around between all these different industries to diving deep into one of its junctions, stage plays. It would already be difficult to adapt a regular theater performance into an exhilarating showing if we're talking about practicality, but in the anime, the stage play is adapting a popular shonen manga into a 2.5D theater performance. It is explained in the story, but the features within the venue allow for a more interactive show with improved sound design, more advanced technical machinery, in-depth sets, and the fact that it can rotate 360 degrees to allow for smoother transitions and more freedom. We're excited to see this in action, but there's a more pressing issue that hits us in the first episode. The mangaka of the series being adapted doesn't like the script for the show. She says she wants it remade entirely, with the scriptwriter being fired and her taking over the production. This is a big ask for such a huge project being rented out to a sophisticated setting, but as discussed in the show, it is a problem to go ahead with the performance when the original author does not give the thumbs up for production. It proves difficult to do all of this within the time frame given, but to succeed in doing so. The process to get there though is quite tricky. A big issue when making movies, TV shows, comics, and anything else within entertainment is when you try to adapt it from another medium. Two problems arise when doing this. The first one is utilizing the medium in a way that makes it unique to that form of entertainment. The second problem is faithfully adapting the source material to respect the creators and the fans of the work. If all producers cared about these two things, the world would be a perfect place. However, not all studios care about the art and would rather make a quick buck. I would say something about capitalism's downsides, but we're not here to discuss the problems in the world right now. In the anime, the TV drama that we first saw was an example of a bad adaptation. There was no push from the mangaka, and it led to a subpar show that many of the fans were enraged with. It's a whole drama fiasco between the authors, and I believe it's a well-deserved squabble they get into. Both are on extreme sides of the spectrum, and afterwards, they recognize how they're both wrong in some aspects. There's a good middle ground that most producers should aim to hit, and the stage play in Oshinoko is able to strike that sweet spot. There's real-life examples of both cases. Fallout was another show I covered that did the original IP justice. If you want, check out that video I made after this one, but for now, let's look at how it's able to be done. Todd Howard talked with the director who made the show, and in their conversations, Todd said he was able to recognize how passionate the director was about the Fallout series. He said that the director was able to pick out the core values of the series, and with that being clear, it was smooth sailing when it came to cooperating between Bethesda and the television studio. The show definitely did everything that they could to stay faithful to the series, having exact measurements of the vault as well as keeping the comedy everyone loves in the writing. If you want to talk about bad adaptations, just look at what Borderlands did to their already dying franchise with the movie. The producers and writers had no idea what the established audience wanted from the series, and people outside of the loop were even more confused as to what this puddle of slop was supposed to be. The casting, the writing, everything about this movie was not praised in the slightest. If you have some sort of big reveal planned after the fact, such as a new game entry in the franchise, then you better divulge resources to making the movie a big hit. A hit at all, actually. A good example about an adaptation is Arcane. I believe this relates more closely to the stage play because like the stage play took a detailed story and used the features of the theaters to encapsulate some of the more intricate messages, Arcane took what was loose lore between all of the legends and strung it together into a succinct, linear story with multiple moving parts. Seeing as it was made by the same company that made the original game, there weren't many internal issues on deciding how to adapt it, but the process itself was still extensive in wrapping the scraps of world building and characterization into a premium package. In Oshinoko, an added issue into the mix was with the original creator themselves. Having experienced success so early into their career, all sorts of psychological phenomena happen in the brain when you have so many eyes on you at an infant stage. I won't get into it here, but clashing ideals is another reason why adaptations might not go so well. If you want me to cover this concept of early creative success, then write a comment down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. There's always going to be issues like these when moving between production studios to adapt something. And with the play in Oshinoko, the mangaka didn't feel like their intentions with characters' words were being incorporated into the runtime, and the scriptwriter failed to see how they missed the point at all. The dispute was a huge thing across multiple episodes, but through mistakes and underestimation of the workload, the original creator and the writer collaborated together to rewrite the project. With the knowledge of the mangaka about the intricacies of the original work and the wisdom of the writer with how 2.5D stage plays function, they were able to negotiate to a state where everyone was happy. It won't always end up like this. There may be some things that can't be completed because simply it just won't work in the medium. It just goes to show the complications that come within the industry. Oshinoko focused a whole sub-arc on this issue, and it displayed well all the hardships that come when you have these obsessive creatives, because to be honest, most creatives are possessive who want to do things their own way. It'll work better, just like in most situations, if we just communicate with one another. I want to cover the dynamics between actors and the struggles they find within themselves. In the anime, multiple of our main characters have some sort of hardship or purpose they perfect their craft for. In Aqua's case, it is for achieving his revenge. In Akane's case, it is for exhibiting her version of perfect acting. In Kana's case, she is trying to prove herself as an asset rather than a liability. Under the front end though, there's an underlying reason as to why they might be trying their best to achieve this. We'll start with Akane because she has some strong feelings, but not nearly as skewed or complicated as some of the other characters. I'm not calling her a basic bitch, but she might be an avid fan of the Starbucks pink drink. Akane wants to showcase her prime acting while bringing out the best of her rivals. She wants to prove herself while competing with the people whom she respects. It's a valiant goal because it is harmless at the end of it all. Unlike a certain lunatic killer, Akane simply wants to enjoy her passion. There isn't much to be said here other than the fact that she may suffer from self-esteem and confidence issues. We already discussed this, but Akane does suffer from not being able to see the actual value of her performances. Despite being so wonderful in the play, she does feel a bit sorrowful because the way that she sees it, she has skewed her performance and how much the audience enjoyed it to be lesser than the fellow actors she was on stage with. It's sad to see something like this, but this ultimately can be solved through self-reflection. Let's get into Aqua's situation, which is ultimately more grim. Aqua wants to enact revenge on the people who wronged him and his family in the past. He is going to do this by putting on a unique performance that will get him deeper within the industry, closer to the higher-ups. Most people would be able to do this through deepening their passion for acting and working on this craft, but for Aqua, there are circumstances that won't allow for this. Aqua suffers from trauma. It is the reason he is acting at all and the reason he needs to advance forward. This also bites him back through the psychological fact that the trauma doesn't allow him to enjoy the process of acting because he doesn't believe he deserves forgiveness for the murder of Ai. It is too complicated to talk about here, but the main point is that while he needs to move forward, he can't do it in the traditional way. Trauma leads to a fracturing of oneself, which is accentuated by the attempt to mask yourself and act as something else. The practice of acting doesn't naturally help trauma, but adds on more pressure and stress onto the already deep gash on your psyche. Aqua has had his fair share of counseling and therapy, but he didn't take it to heart because of how the trauma warped his identity and purpose. He is stuck in purgatory between wanting to enjoy his life and giving in to his dark desires. In the end, he decides to chase his revenge and prove that he is the best when it comes to being up on stage. Where most people would enjoy proving themselves, Aqua hates it. Whereas he wishes the best for the people around him, this side of him that appears subtle to others must affect them greatly. Let's move on to the final character of the trio, and in my opinion, the most interesting one out of the bunch, Kana. Her situation is similar to Akane because of the practicality of it happening in real life, but has a more in-depth problem when trying to tackle her own identity and how it affects her interactions with the actors around her. The crisis she's having within herself, and her self-esteem changes how she performs on stage and trying to match the energy of those around her. If you were playing a competitive multiplayer game, Kana would be a support, someone who knows how to highlight the strengths of the people around her in real time, even when there is improv or ad-libbing involved. It requires an incredible amount of talent, but the sad thing about it is that you can't shine on your own. You need someone to match, which means gaining a certain amount of renown to be put in those projects with the people who have the same amount of experience solo or in cooperation with other people. Due to the industry, Kana's become jaded from her childhood days leading up until now. She believes she is a chess piece meant to be moved in the game of strategy. Her relevance isn't as critical as the king, nor is it as impactful as a queen or a bishop. At any point, she can be sacrificed in order to improve the overall outcome of the match. While this isn't true in the slightest, it's how her mind has conditioned her to think due to the influence from a young age. The entertainment industry does this to people, whether you're acting in commercials or getting runtime up on the big screen. There's a big conflict in the middle of the play where Akane wants to face off against her her rival, Kana, but due to the secondhand nature that's been constructed inside of her psyche, Kana retreats back to the sidelines, allowing Akane to take center stage with the performance. This isn't what Akane wants, nor is it what Kana truly needs either. She deserves to be her own shining star, rather than the one operating the key light on someone else. History repeats itself, and through support from her friends, mainly from Aqua, she's able to overcome the shackles holding her back. For a moment, she goes all out and gives the people a shield that they'll never forget. It isn't something that was easily overcome, but due to the trust she has in Aqua, she's able to leave it all to him so that they can make the play an even greater success. Without this resolution, the play would have been great, but because of this extra inch, they're able to go another mile and turn it into excellence. Oshinoko is able to present all three of these characters in a light that makes you feel sympathy. Whether you feel the competitive nature of Akane, Aqua's burning desire for results, or Kana's distraught confidence in herself, one way or another, you can at least understand where they are coming from, unlike real-life documentaries that follow entertainers rise to the top where everything feels unrelatable. There's a story arc for a character that I never imagined would have happened, because given how he was portrayed in the first season, you would assume he'd be done then and there. Melt is a recurring person in the second season, and he brings a lot more to the table in terms of talent and wisdom than he did before. He has a redemption arc, one where he makes up for his past mistakes and does well to the people who have helped him. It's a lot deeper than I imagined for a side character, so let's dive into how the plot develops Melt and what it means in terms of the industry. As I've talked about, there is a reputation you garner from all the projects you are placed on. Depending on the scale of production, some good deeds might be able to outweigh the bad ones depending on the severity of the issue or the accomplishment. In Melt's situation, he's plagued by a story that is foreign because of his past works. From working on the television drama, people disregard any sort of improvement that he may be making. Any spotlight that he could have would be swept away because of the stigma that his acting is not that great. It is at least average since working on that drama, but when compared to his peers in the stage play, there are veterans and geniuses all around him who know how to play off of each other's strengths, while all he can do is try his best and hope it works. When you're stuck in the pothole and the setback doesn't allow anyone to believe in you and your own second to believe in yourself, then what do? As a creative, this can lead to career-ending situations. A way you can rebound from this grave danger, and honestly, my preferred choice, is to find your strength and work on that. Melt may not seem like it, but he is very passionate and serious. After finding out about the beauty of acting, he makes it a goal of his to practice his craft, and while doing this, he takes advice from his seniors in the field like Aqua and puts it into practice. In the case of the 2.5D stage play, it is perfecting a performance that shocks the audience so much with precise flair in his demeanor and movements. Another important factor of trying to mount a comeback is not losing the motivation to continue in a space where you're ridiculed. One of the reasons that Melt found it in himself to keep on going in this theater performance was his connection to the character he was playing in the manga. This isn't only a matter of passion, but also affects the quality of the performance. Immersion is said by some to be an effect that a work has on the audience. Being an actor, following a character's guidelines of personality, Melt read quite deeply into his character's being and connected it with himself. Empathy when it comes to a fictional narrative standpoint mostly seems to have effect when the character in question is having a correlative experience to the reader. Therefore, not everyone will have it. It just so happened that Melt's character was very similar to him in some aspects. He was always looked down on, as if he never had any potential. In the story, Melt's character redeems himself in an amazing way by fending off the opposition for enough time that his teammates may arrive. Melt recognized the similarities between him and his character and felt sad for him and himself. This emotion was also what inspired him to take his acting to another level and redeem himself in his story. With lots of practice, building confidence, and forming flair in his movements, Melt performs an astounding showing at the stage play's premiere that shocked everyone, both fans and producers alike. It was unlike anything you'll see out of the whole cast, and it goes to show that you don't just need motivation, but a passion that allows for smooth immersion into your role is also valuable. Many successful actors find joy in playing their character. Whether it's an original with no slate or someone from a well-detailed novel, actors immerse themselves in the role. This forms a passion for this role in specific and their job in general. Many of the works I've mentioned throughout this video had this sentiment among the creatives, and I can't imagine an audience enjoying a work if the actors didn't enjoy it right alongside them. When it comes to art, you can't define it through one word or a simple statement. Every piece of media out there can be interpreted in multiple ways. There are multiple lessons to take away from each show, book, or movie, despite what the author might say. It's in human nature to hide subconscious tones in everything we do, such as the body language and sarcasm we might exhibit when talking to people. These actions also spill into the things we create through intricate detailing we might not purposely consider. In Oshinoko, we follow Aqua through his journey of trying to achieve revenge against the people who orchestrated Ai's death. To every story though, especially long-running ones like this that have multiple curves and arcs, there are hidden messages in every section of the plot. The overarching sub-themes in Oshinoko is to reveal the entertainment industry for what it is. It isn't full of glamour as many of us think it is, and there's more than meets the eye. From an outside perspective, we tend to miss many of the finer details, but Oshinoko uses real-life examples or situations adjacent to reality to spell it out for us. us. It would be depressing for it to be this alone though, so Akasaka puts characters that we could easily relate to into the positions of the entertainers. At the end of the day, many actors and musicians and such were regular people like all of us. You always have to start from somewhere, and Oshinoko really humanizes the characters we follow to a point where you can even feel empathy for each and every one of them. It is amazing that Oshinoko is able to do this alongside so many other grueling topics and themes covered and make it a succinct story. If you would ask me for one anime that perfectly encapsulates the human side of the entertainment industry, I would say Oshinoko. Even if there are grim sides to a facet of life, there will always be upsides we can push forward, then ride or die for.